This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsa Hone, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. One of my goals with this series is eventually to do one in every single set, and I've done almost 20 of them so far. Lately, it's been interesting looking at sets that the community generally thinks of as bad sets, and we're doing another one of those today with a look at Dragon's Maze. Dragon's Maze was released in May of 2013 as the third set in Return to Ravnica block, and it is generally considered a severely underpowered set that hasn't made much of an impact on the game. As we move through this MTG Top 10, I'll leave you to decide whether or not this reputation is deserved before weighing in myself at the end of the video. To be eligible for this list, a card in Dragon's Maze had to receive its very first printing in the set. This means a card like Putrefy wasn't eligible. Before we get to the list, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Magic Fest or Grand Prix is worth 1 point. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, it is Advent of the Worm, which actually featured in the MTG Top 10 on Monday this week too. This is a 4-mana instant that makes a 5/5 trampling worm, and that's a pretty good deal because it's an instant. It's also kind of a 4-mana 5/5 with flash as well, and that's good because a 5/5 with flash can really ambush a whole lot of creatures. It was played in Selesnya aggro decks in both block and standard, in addition to also appearing in Naya decks in the standard format. It doesn't have any points though, since rotating. At number 9, it is Rurik Thar the Unbowed. This 6-mana 6/6 comes with the handy keywords of Vigilance and Reach, and while he does have to attack every single turn, Vigilance makes that less of a problem, since he can get in for 6 and still hang back to hold off creatures including large flyers. Perhaps most notably, Rurik Thar also really punishes players who want to play non-creature spells. Doing 6 every time they play one of those really limits how often your opponent can be playing them. It has been a sideboard card in mid-range decks over the years as something that can be brought in against any opponent casting lots of non-creature spells. In Standard, it played this role in Jund and Devotion decks. In Modern, it played a similar role in Amulet Titan. While he doesn't have any points since 2017, I think it always has a chance at gaining more points. There just aren't that many beefy creatures out there who punish opponents for casting spells quite like Rurik Thar does. At number 8, it is War Leader's Helix. So, if you compare this to the original Ravnica's Lightning Helix, it is a little bit disappointing. After all, it costs twice as much mana and only gains you 1 more life and does 1 more damage, but that comparison isn't that relevant in a format that didn't have Lightning Helix. 4 mana to do 4 to something and gain 4 life as an instant is pretty good. It gives you some reach against an opponent, and removing a creature and gaining 4 life is a pretty great feeling that makes you feel pretty safe, at least for the next turn or so. It saw some significant play in Standard, where it was played in Jeskai Control as well as Boros Aggro. It doesn't have any points since rotating out of Standard. At number 7, it is Unflinching Courage. This grants a creature an impressive stats boost to go along with the evasiveness of Trample, not to mention Lifelink, which makes it very hard for your opponent to ever win a race against you. In Block and Standard, it was featured in aggro decks, which ran difficult-to-kill creatures like Fiendslayer Paladin and Fleecemane Lion, making them great targets for an aura. In Modern, it's been played in decks even more focused on that strategy. Bogles, a deck about sticking auras on hexproof creatures, is its primary home there. However, while Bogles is still a thing in Modern, more recent versions of the deck don't run Unflinching Courage, and it doesn't have any points since 2018. At number 6, it is Blood Baron of Vizkopa. Packing lifelink and protection from 2 colors, the Blood Baron is incredibly difficult to deal with for many decks. If he goes unchecked, he eventually gets the controller's life total high enough that he really goes crazy, getting huge and taking to the sky. In both Block and Standard, the Blood Baron had protection from some of the format's most powerful removal spells, and it was the win condition for many control decks running both Black and White. It gained all of its points in Block and Standard. At number 5, it is Notion Thief, a creature that can steal extra card draws away from your opponent. Because he comes with Flash, Notion Thief can be particularly devastating as a surprise in response to a card draw spell. He was played in Standard sideboards where he could be brought in against control players playing Sphinx's Revelation. Taking away all those extra cards was amazing. Notion Thief is also played in the Eternal formats, where he sees considerable mainboard play as a result of the plethora of powerful card draw spells in those formats. One kind of funny thing you can do with him there is play it in response to an opponent's brainstorm. If you do that, you just straight up get to draw cards, and you don't have to actually do what brainstorm tells you to do, which is pretty sweet. Obviously, casting it in Vintage in response to powerful spells like Ancestral Recall is pretty great too. While the Thief doesn't have any points in 2021 as of now, it seems highly unlikely that we'll get through the entire year without Notion Thief putting up some points, and it's going to add to its score in the future. At number 4 it is Aetherling, which comes with a slew of activated abilities. It can raise its power or toughness at the cost of lowering the other, it can become unblockable, and it can also protect itself from removal with a flicker effect. The combination of evasiveness and elusiveness made Aetherling one of the primary win conditions for control decks, while it was in both block and standard, and that's where it gained all of its points. At number 3 it is Voice of Resurgence, a 2-mana 2/2 that comes with the ability to make a token anytime your opponent casts a spell on your turn and when it dies. That token can be quite large sometimes too, since its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you have in play. It is basically impossible not to get 2 for 1 by Voice of Resurgence, and that's what makes it a powerful card. It has had multi-format success, coming primarily in aggro decks in block, standard, and modern. It's had a little bit of a resurgence lately as a result of the Pioneer format. It has been played in Heliod Life, Winota, and Niv Mizzet Reborn decks in the format. Heliod Life has since been banned out of existence, but given the variety of decks that have already played Voice of Resurgence, it seems likely to continue to find success in Pioneer. At number 2, it is Sin Collector. This creature has a powerful Disruptive Enter the Battlefield ability that allows you to exile an instant or sorcery from the opponent's hand, which is a pretty good deal, especially when it comes attached to a 3-mana 2/1 body. And unlike some other creature-based hand disruption that involves exiling, your opponent never gets this card back. In Return to Ravnica block, it was one of the most heavily played cards, with 4 top 8s at the Block Pro Tour, all coming in control decks. It found significant success in Standard in Orzhov and Esper control, as well as in Reanimator decks, where it could be used to make sure the coast was clear for you to try to reanimate something huge. Modern is where it's been the most successful though, and where it is still being played today. First, it was featured in Birthing Pod decks, as being able to tutor up the Sin Collector at an opportune time was pretty powerful. The pod was of course ultimately banned out of Modern, but the Collector went on to find success in that deck's descendants, which are creature toolbox decks that replace the pod with Collected Company and Court of Calling. It is also currently being played in the sideboard of Modern Humans. Modern Humans is a 5-color aggro deck, but one that utilizes several creatures who disrupt the opponent, so Sin Collector is right at home there. Sin Collector is likely to continue to gain points in Modern going forward. And at number 1, it is Wear and Tear, a split card. The split cards in Dragon's Maze are unique in that they come with Fuse, which allows you to cast both sides of the cards if you want to, as opposed to making you choose one side or another. You can of course still choose to only cast one side in the event you don't have the necessary targets for the other. No matter which option you choose, it does the job really efficiently, and it takes up a lot of sideboard slots in Modern, Legacy, and even Vintage as a result. It's one of the best cards around for spot removal of problem artifacts and enchantments, and it's going to remain at number 1 on this list for the foreseeable future. So those are the 10 Dragon's Maze cards that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. In the end, I don't think that Dragon's Maze is remotely close to being one of the worst sets ever. Having done a lot of MTG top 10s on bad sets lately, Dragon's Maze blows them all completely out of the water. This is definitely a case where perception is not a reflection of reality. Not only did the set have an impact on the block and standard formats of its time, there are also several cards in the set that continue to be played in Magic to this day, in particular Wear and Tear, Sin Collector, Voice of Resurgence, and Notion Thief. Dragon's Maze may have been a little underpowered compared to its predecessors, but compared to other bad sets, it's not even close. If you want to own any of these Dragon's Maze cards, check out the description, where you can find direct links for all of those cards in the Card Kingdom store. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want to catch up on MTG Top 10s I've already done, including several more on specific sets, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. And if you enjoy this channel, consider subscribing to my other YouTube channel, Needs a Hone History. Thanks for watching.